to those two. What I hate about ordering parts from different suppliers is that they use different shipping methods. So my clutch came in, but I do not have my fluid, flywheel bolts, flywheel dowel pin, and throwout bearing. So I can't do a clutch job, but at least I get to unbox these. Anyways, I decided not to go with a South Bend again because I feel like I was just gonna do the same thing to it again, because the more I think about it, the more track focused this car is gonna be. So I went with the one and only Comp Clutch. This is stage 4. I know the Evo, I put a stage 3 in it, and I purchased this from, they're called, ooh, focus, hello, Tuner Sports, and they are actually having a really killer deal on these clutches, and this is the stage 4, and it's a 6-puck ceramic sprung disc. I hope I ordered the right one. So let's go ahead and check it out. And we got our stickers, 50 horsepower instructions, don't care. Yes. So here it is, the 6-puck sprung disc. This is mainly a track focus disc, so it's gonna take launching better and drag racing better, which I want to do. And it also tends to shift faster since there's less weight on the disc itself, since, you know, it's actually cut and broken up into pieces, so it's lighter than a regular clutch disc that you would normally have, like the other one. And here is the pressure plate. This is, I believe, like a 2600 series pressure plate. So pretty much exactly what you get from the ACT, but by Comp Clutch. And you got your clutch alignment tool and throwout bearing. Now, a very important thing to keep in mind with these, and I think that might have had something to do with my other clutch, is flywheel step height. When you get your flywheel resurfaced, this again is a Comp Clutch. So this is a complete Comp Clutch kit now. I'm running their flywheel and clutch disc and pressure plate. But when you get your flywheel resurfaced, you actually, since this is not just a simple flat flywheel like the Evos, you actually have to ask them to measure it and cut it to a specific step height. For our cars, this is ideal is 0.610, but I believe you can go as low as 0.608 and up to 0.612. And what they do is pretty much measure the step height from this to the actual flywheel plate surface, and they'll cut some of this material off to get the correct step height from these two. So yeah, that's my new clutch system. Let's go ahead and get it on, but you guys won't see that because I have to wait for the rest of the stuff to come in. So catch you in a little bit.
Sometimes I really hate doing things legit. We are back at Revco to get my brand new clutch balanced. A lot of people don't know that these things actually do not come balanced from the factory, so they may be wobbling and whatnot when you install them. So I'm trying to combat that vibration and harmonics to keep my bearings alive and my crankshaft in one piece. So time time to get it balanced. Let's go drop it off and see what happens.
Alright guys, we got the clutch back from the machine shop, or more balancing shop than anything, and it is done. I'm actually happy to report that Comp Clutch actually did a pretty good job at getting this close to perfect balance. I believe for the pressure plate, he only had to remove that material right there. That used to be something there. So good job, Comp. Almost had it. Compared to the South Bend, I know he actually had to remove material and actually weld a washer on one of the sides of the pressure plate to actually get it to balance. So Comp by far did a better job balancing their material, and it shows, because that's barely anything. Like, just trying to feel that, that's like maybe a millimeter of material gone, or half a millimeter of material gone. Excuse me. But anyways, that's for the pressure plate. The flywheel is a different story. Since these were the markings for the first time I got everything balanced, but since I got the flywheel resurfaced, I had to get this rebalanced, and I believe he made those 2 new markings. So not as bad as the first time. The first time, you know, obviously needed more material because it was a brand new flywheel, but after that it was close to being in spec, so you only had to do these 2 versus those 4. But yeah, now we got our clutch assembly all spec'd out. All we gotta do is wait for my fluids, bolts, and what else? Dowel pin for the crankshaft or flywheel, and then we can go ahead and install it. So let's go open that box up. Alright, gentlemen, the last package has finally arrived. Extreme PSI for the win. So, as you can see right off the bat, we got number 1 for the diff and T-case. We are going with Redline shock proof heavy gear oil, full synthetic. This stuff is literally like red, so it's kind of fun to put in. And for the transmission, we're going with the good stuff, Multool Gear 300. Is this leaking? No. Anyways, this is probably some of the best stuff out there for the money, and it is recommended by TRE for my transmission. So, you know, whatever's gonna help me extend my transmission life from the pros who's been doing this for years, I'm gonna listen to them. So we're gonna need 3 quarts of that stuff. So there it is, 3 quarts. And what else do we got? Flywheel bolts, brand new. These are 6 bolts. So a lot of people don't know that 6 bolt and 7 bolt, though they may look the same, the 6 bolt flywheels are actually longer than the 7 bolts. So keep that in mind if you're running, or if you're reusing your flywheel bolts, which I probably could have done, but I didn't. I just felt like buying these since they're pretty cheap. Here's the part number. But yeah, just remember that if you're reusing bolts, make sure they're actually 6 bolts and not 7 bolt, because you'll have shorter bolts and they won't hold the threads as good. So we got 6 of those right here. And this one, this last part is kind of controversial. If I can find it. Lols, it wasn't even in the box, it was in the bag. Okay, as I was saying, kind of controversial because some of the cranks do not come with dowel pins. And what the heck, man? Get out. Alright, here it is. So 7 bolt cranks come with this dowel pin installed in the crank. 6 bolt NA cranks do not. And there's multiple threads, you can look it up yourself, is that people have had phantom knock when they install their flywheel, clutch assembly, whatever, without this. And so, you know, I've been reading enough, and I think since that crank, oh my gosh, since the crank has a hole for it, I feel like they should have these in there. Why they don't put them in some of the cranks, I have no idea. But from my research and my understanding, it's meant to be there and it serves a purpose. So if there's any, you know, possibility of decreasing knock or phantom knock, then I'm gonna go for it. So I went to go ahead and bought this for my crank. So yeah, check if your crank doesn't have it, and if it doesn't, it might be a good idea to actually grab one of these. They're like, I think, $2, and they may help a lot of problems in the long run. So yeah, that's all the stuff we got. Fluids, flywheel bolts, and the dowel pin. So let's go ahead and install everything now. Alright, and this is what I'm talking about. As you can see, there's clearly a hole for a dowel pin, and it is not here. So interesting, right? Yeah, so I threw this in the freezer for a little bit, hopefully shrinking down, and now I'm just gonna tap it in. Hopefully we'll have a dowel pin now. Alrighty, as you can see, the dowel pin is now in, and we have a dowel pin. Cool. Now we can go ahead and install the flywheel and actually have the flywheel set in place while I get start the flywheel bolts. And a little tech tip, it's actually better, and actually the way you should, to, since you know you put red Loctite on your flywheel bolts, you actually put the Loctite on inside the threads in here rather than on the bolt, because there's been incidences where you put the thread lock on the bolt and the actual bolt will kind of seep, and the thread lock would actually, the Loctite I'm talking about, will actually seep around the crank and the surface, the back surface of the flywheel, and that kind of create a barrier, thus not letting the flywheel sit perfectly flat. So in order to avoid that problem, you actually put the Loctite inside the threads of each crank shaft, crank bolt, rather than on the flywheel bolt itself, and you can go ahead and torque them down to whatever foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me go find the Loctite and we'll get started. Alright, and as you can see, we got the Loctite in there in the middle of the threads pretty much, so none can seep out and, you know, cause some interference between the pressure plate, the flywheel and the crank. So let's go ahead and bolt up that crank and start locking them down. Alright, so I got the flywheel seated on the new dowel pin. Since it was a new dowel pin, it was kind of like fighting me, because it's, you know, brand new material, so it's has very high tolerance versus, you know, a dowel pin that's been, you know, used a lot and had a pressure plate removed on and off before. So I had to just thread the bolts in and slowly start tightening them all one by one in a crisscross pattern until I got the flywheel to sit flush with the crank. So now this is my way of doing it. You can also have like someone hold the crank on the other side by the sprocket with a breaker bar, but since it's only me, I got a piece of metal, long bar, steel, not aluminum, because aluminum will bend with this much torque, and you bolt it up to one of the flywheel bolts and you lock it against the subframe. And so when you go to turn it as such, let me just get one of these, doesn't matter which one. If I can do this. Anyways, like you turn it and it locks against the subframe is what I'm trying to say. So I'm gonna go ahead and do these in increments of 3. I'm gonna go to the torque spec is 94 to 101 foot-pounds. I'm gonna go 98 right in the middle between all of them. So let's go with, I'll go with like 45, and then maybe like 75, and then I'll finish off with 98.
So let me go ahead and do that. Alright, bolts are now torqued down to 98 foot-pounds. Now what we're going to do is just go ahead and clean up the surface on both the flywheel and pressure plate. So we have good clean surfaces right there. And then we're going to go ahead and use a clutch alignment tool to center the clutch disc. The clutch disc with the step goes towards the pressure plate. So that's going to be, this is going to be like that on top of it, and the flat side is gonna go on the flywheel. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we got it centered on, we got the surfaces clean. Now we're gonna go ahead and bolt up the pressure plate to this. Luckily, when I got mine balanced, my machinist actually marked it for me, so I know where to line this up first try, and we'll be good from there. Alright, and now we got that bolted up and centered. Now we just gotta tighten these pressure plate bolts, and those are 14 foot-pounds, so I'm gonna do probably 2 increments, get like 7 and 7, so it'll be 7 foot-pounds first and then 14. Alright, now all these bolts are done being torqued, 14 foot-pounds, crisscross pattern, and in theory you can go ahead and remove the alignment tool because the actual clutch disc is being clamped perfectly centered by the pressure plate bolted on now, and you can just slide that back in and boom. Yeah, so now comes the fun and hard part of getting that heavy transmission back in here, and I'm currently by myself, so don't know how this is gonna work out. I might have to ask for some reinforcements, but yeah, let's go get all that prepped up. And now we go to the actual transmission of this, and you want to go ahead and install your throwout bearing. I recommend using only OEM because there's been plenty of incidences of having bad luck with aftermarket throwout bearings. That's including ACT, South Bend, Comp. I am reusing my OEM throwout bearing since it only has freaking 7,000 miles on it, and it is still pretty much brand new. Anyways, what you want to do is install it, make sure there's grease between this sleeve and the throwout bearing itself, so it should be able to pivot back and forth smoothly. You want to make sure that clip is engaged correctly, because if this comes off while you're installing the car, then it's gonna have a bad time because you're gonna have to take everything out just to get this clip back in. So yeah, that's it. Now let's go ahead and get the trans to the car. Sometimes you just gotta admit defeat. I had to call the reinforcements in. Anyways, I could not get this thing to line up by myself, so I had to call my buddy Engine Builder Raul, and we finally got this back in. What I dropped? Nothing. Okay. So honestly, like, there isn't really a how-to to get this trans back in. It's literally, you just gotta fiddle with it. It's very tedious and annoying, but use a jack, 2 jacks, a friend, 2 friends, anything you gotta do to pretty much get it lined up. But in theory, you guys mess around with it enough, it will cooperate and line up. And we also got this bad boy to line up, and the rear motor mount, trans mount to line up, which I hear doesn't do anything, so I might delete that in the future. But yeah, anyways, big boy's leaving. All we gotta do is torque these bolts down. These are 35, and there's one back there that's 12. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll call it a day, or a night, because the sun is gone. Alrighty, and we got all of our connectors pretty much all wired back up. It's fairly simple. I didn't disconnect too many things.
It's just speed sensor in the back. Got O2, water temp, etc., etc. And I believe that was pretty much it. Now we're moving on to the shifter cables, and a big problem with these cars is that the bracket that actually holds the shifter cables has bushings that tend to go out pretty bad, and they end up leaving a lot of slop in this bracket. So what you can do is get these upgraded aluminum washers, bushings. Road Race makes them. Not sure if anyone else makes them, but what they do is that they end up being, how does it go? I believe it goes like that. So it ends up being that they fit right there and bolt up to the transmission as such. So, and then you got some washers you put on this side. So this will eliminate that slop and have more precise shifting. So let's go ahead and install this. And there you have them, new bushings installed. Nice sandwich, nice fit. No more play in this at all. So we are good to go. Alright guys, still chugging away at this. We got pretty much everything done with. We got the T-case bolted up, filled with fluid. We got all the cross member, control arms, axles, what else? Downpipe, and slave cylinder bolted up. That's everything down there. Up top, we just finished bolting up the battery tray. All I need to do is fill up the trans with fluid and install the intake and intercooler pipe beam, and then we're done. This is actually a lot longer than I expected. That's because I'm lazy. And of course, we're using nothing but the best. I can't stress how good this oil is. Motul Gear 300 for you guys' transmission needs. It's not that expensive as well. Highly recommend it. Alright guys, we're finally all back to what it used to be. I got the wheels on all four since about 3 weeks now. It's because I was waiting for warranty and stuff on the old clutch. Kind of slowed me down. Then I just went with the new clutch, blah blah blah. Anyways, everything's bolted up, and a good idea to get oil pressure through your motor. So go ahead and take off this fuse. This is the main engine fuse. It's a 20 fuse. When you take that off, the engine will crank and build oil pressure without turning on. It won't send power to the coils, injectors, and fuel pumps. So you're good for cranking there. So everything's bolted up, everything's primed, and we're ready to turn it on now. So let's see how it goes. Alright, I did something right. It's running. Now all we gotta do is brake in the clutch. So see you guys in 350 miles to 500 miles. Have a good one.